So many places, so many paths that had belonged to the two of us. I cannot help seeking them out, again and again. Although today, to me they are just void spaces, leading nowhere, being nowhere, a useless scenery after the play has been discontinued for good. What am I doing here? What could I possibly expect? Strolling along memory lane seems to make no sense at all. You have been my loyal companion for more than a decade, day by day, 24 hours a day. We had established a perfect understanding for each other. The meaning of your life was to love me and make me happy. Once I had grasped this, I strived to offer you the same. Based on this mutual attitude, we set off to discover the world. I never was anywhere without you. I have never been anywhere without you. This is the season of the falling leaves. You never had a hard time with rainy days. Roaming through the dripping forest, taking a stroll ahead of me, exploring the underbrush here and there and hurrying back to me once in a while, just to touch my hand with your wet muzzle so as to tell me how much fun we had together. This is how you played out your modest enjoyments. All those mysteriously fascinating smells and scents hovering about among the trees and bushes, they were so much stronger with the air being moist and humid. You were allured by the abounding deer tracks that crossed our path, arousing your hunting fever, tempting you to follow them into the deep, dense underwood. I remember you, once in younger years, to get so excited that you whimpered and whined in sheer despair, far from being able to understand why I couldn't let you off the leash. How on earth could I keep you from chasing such wonderful prey, when it seemed to be only a few steps ahead? How should one ever understand how humans tick? But you forgave me, as you have always forgiven me my misbehaviors. And there were even worse ones than this. Instead of feeling guilty, I now have to learn to accept your forgiveness gratefully. I wish I could tell you this, now that you're gone. I never was anywhere without you. I have never been anywhere without you. A number of years ago I had started a photo book for you. Well, to tell the truth, it actually was a birthday present for my wife Krista. It had room for 80 large single prints, and I intended to design every one of them as artfully as I possibly could. But after like 10 pages or so it was put away, and I only took to continuing with it sometime after your death. It is finished by now, that is 1.5 years after I had to let you go. Or as I had better say, after I had been compelled to try to live on without you. It's still gnawing on me every day. Living on without you is the heaviest task I ever had to confront. Ridiculous? Disgraceful even? After all, you were only a dog. Is this what some people want to tell me? Do you want my answer? Go to hell. Who the fuck are you to judge my grief and pain? Have you ever been loved by a dog? Have you got any idea that a dog's love is superior to any human love, except for very rare exceptions? How about yourself? Are you even capable of love? Get lost and leave me alone. I don't give a damn about mentally retarded people like you. But I wanted to offer you a glimpse at some pictures from my album. Pictures and memories are all I got left since you passed. I won't forget you. I neither can nor ever will. Maybe you're right, I'm still clinging to you, because I refuse to let you go. But this refusal is born out of misery. Life without you feels so lonely, inane even. What I'm actually striving for is an opportunity to keep in touch with you somehow. To feel you near me, pretending that your ethereal being were still around in some faraway spheres, and all I had to do is finding a way to meet it. And astoundingly, believe it or not, I sometimes get very close to you indeed. In those rare moments I get the feel of your furry back and belly under my palms. I perceive the soft resistance of raw, leathery skin while fondling your paws. I can even smell the distinct fragrance of your body, peaty, gentle and natural. I never was anywhere without you. I have never been anywhere without you.
Wintertime nighes, but my bereavement pain it cannot bring again. Twice no one dies.
Oh yes, my dearest, you were snow crazy, as almost any dog is. I would give anything to have you here with me, now that the first snow has fallen. For all the fun and pleasure, you really went out of your mind. I can still see you running in loops and circles, zigzagging, twisting and turning like a hare running for his life. This is one thing I love so much about dogs, and first of all about you, my sweetheart, that you can show your plain happiness so unabashedly in a totally free and easy way. And in a contagious manner too, so that invariably any bystander's eyes would light up with a smile appearing on his face. Nowadays, with less snow falling almost from year to year, don't we grown-ups feel some longing wistful appeal every time the flakes are swirling? Not so with dogs, who keep their gift for unspoiled, childlike happiness throughout their lives. Last night it was snowing incessantly. I was up the whole night wide awake, struggling with anger and grief for not to be able to take you out into the glorious fairy tale white in the morning. Your fellow creatures and how we humans treat them. And how some people treat you dogs. Foolishness and stupidity, pure ignorance or even sadistic tendencies prevail, and you dogs keep enduring almost anything. Because you trust us through thick and thin, only because you can't do otherwise. You couldn't bear being left alone, not for an hour, not even for a few minutes. Whenever I wanted to go to a shop and leave you in the car for a short while, you were devastated with separation anxiety. After a long period of time, we finally achieved that I could enter the shop at a gas station, so long as you could keep an eye on me. You were, though restless, beyond panic. But every time I came back to the car you greeted me with such exuberant joy as if we hadn't been together for years. Anytime I went to the bathroom and closed the door behind me, you were gently scratching at it with one of your front paws, begging humbly for me to let you in too. Which of course I did. I wish you were here today, my very best friend ever, so that together we could leap forward into this great wide open. I wish I could watch your life-affirming and overwhelming enthusiasm for just one more day. I would lay out another goodie trail for you and proudly watch you skillfully searching for each piece, finding every single bit strictly following your highly gifted sense of smell. I never was anywhere without you. I have never been anywhere without you. As I said before, we were together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because doing otherwise would have been cruel and devastating for you, your separation panic was so extremely pronounced, that being left alone made you ill from despair. But being together with you all the time implied, that far and wide there is not a single place nor spot, where we hadn't lingered or passed together. And therefore, now that you have deceased, I am painfully reminded of you wherever I go or stand. Nonetheless, today I feel compelled to revisit many of these locations, that are affiliated with particularly touching memories of our togetherness. And I find them everywhere, everywhere. If on the contrary I wished to avoid them, I wouldn't succeed, no way. One thing we both equally adored was day camping in the middle of nowhere. Hardly that I had pitched our pop-up tent, you couldn't await to get in. And in there, once you were done with your chew bone, we both dozed away the afternoon hours laying side by side. We had our secret hidden places, where no one would ever pass, so that we remained undisturbed. One of them is a small elevated piece of ground with small trees and bushes near a river, that runs through a remote, secluded alpine valley. In the summer, while the heat lingered in the lower parts of the area, we spent long cool afternoons on this wonderfully enchanted spot. You were busy exploring the surroundings, quenched your thirst on the river bank while at the same time cooling your paws and legs in the crisp clear water. And then came back to me and our tent for another afternoon nap. secret valley of ours was in the Chiantal area, where we spent more than a year together after I had retired from work. We shared a tiny but comfortable bungalow on a campground, which we had rented long-term for many years. You loved both this place and the area, which perfectly suited your wants and needs. And mine too, of course. But most of all I relished your being happy, the way you floated in bliss and your manifold ways to express your pleasure, that inevitably sparked my own enthusiasm to be alive. In 2020, during our spring holiday, I had the idea to construct sort of a tree tent for the two of us. I built a platform some 2 meters above ground and pitched our tent on it. You went berserk once you realized what it was about. Although in the beginning it was difficult for you to climb the steep stairs, the first attempts you ended by jumping sideways off to the ground again. But you didn't give up, and with my assistance you overcame your doubts. And once you stood up there, eagerly awaiting me to follow, you were glowing with pride and enthusiasm. To me it was obvious that this elevated shelter in your understanding triggered some archaic instincts in terms of added security and overview against threat of danger. You relished the hours we spent up there. I felt that you, while lying near the entrance of the tent, were on alert to protect both of us. One day in autumn we went on a car trip to another mountain valley nearby. We followed a narrow bumpy road leading upwards in countless windings, finally ending on a highly elevated alp, where during the summer local farmers grazed their cattle. Standing there felt like floating in the sky. You were in elated spirits too. So many mysterious new smells and odors, telling you stories about fellow dogs or foxes who had passed through, cattle herds, sheep and goats who had foraged here during summertime. I'm standing beside the snug little house where I used to practice as a psychotherapist for 24 years. And for 10 years you were my assistant, lying always by my side during the sessions. Some very few of my patients conquered your heart and you learned to trust them, but with all the others I had to be very careful that you kept your distance. Just around the corner a long, narrow lake stretches along a hollow that was carved out by glaciers during the last ice age. This is where we mostly went for your walks during workdays. The lake has many faces depending on weather conditions and the seasons. We've known them all. In its upper part, the lake can be crossed by a ferry. Whenever we did this, you would sit on the bow sniffing the air, reminding me of Leonardo DiCaprio on the Titanic, exclaiming he was the king of the world. Also, in the nearer range of my practice there is sort of a park, belonging to the cemetery of our city. Another favorite area for our daily walks. Now grief urges me to go there once or twice a week. It's a good place for grieving, old weathered tombstones bearing the names of people long forgotten. Arrays of flowers, candles and memorabilia for the recently deceased, whose ashes were scattered around the trunks of old trees. It's a sullen, dismal scenery perfectly matching my inner landscape. But every time I lose myself in these somber states of mind, I must remember the mission you bequeathed to me, the mission to live out one's life in joy and happiness, whenever the circumstances allow for it. But my present circumstances stand in the way, though I wish I could follow your line. I promise to try, later. On a walk through a suburb of our hometown we accidentally passed 2 blocks of granite, which lay next to the sidewalk. I couldn't resist inviting you for a game of topping. This game of ours went like this: whenever we passed an elevated piece of rock or the like, I loudly said the word top. And immediately you would jump on top of it, which was duly rewarded with a goodie. And so I did now, when we passed these ashlars. As a matter of course you succeeded, as you always did. But what really floored me came 1 year later. We strolled through the same road in the same suburb, where meanwhile we hadn't been for at least 12 months. And when we reached the very same blocks, you jumped on top of the higher one without me even saying a word before. I couldn't grasp it, and I shamefully had to admit that I had definitely underestimated your skills once again. In the hinterlands of our hometown, I know a little pass. Its small road is rarely used, except for the local folks. Parts of it follow an extended ridge, and the whole remote and mountainous area is enlivened by old myths, folklore and gruesome fairy tales. After returning home from our bungalow in the Alps and during the last 5 months of your all too short life, we often went there. You were already badly weakened, but I must admit that by then somehow, I couldn't really perceive this in its full extent yet. Nevertheless, you enjoyed these little car trips, and I felt that in a way, the mystery of the environment seized you too. And I remember you on a lucky day performing your outstanding speed race, doubling and zigzagging over a wide snow-covered field stretching over the height of the pass for one more, last time. In your younger years, I sometimes shot short film scenes of you, with my then rather unsophisticated camera. Today, I deeply regret not to have made more of them. But there's also something magic about old flickering films with their crude grain, hard contrast and poor sharpness. Their language is past tense. Their flaws stand for the ravages of time. All this adds to the impression that past occurrences are irretrievable. And this is why watching these little scenes grieves me even more. But at the same time, this magic lantern, conjuring up your presence in flesh, blood and happy spirit, also makes my heart beat faster. You set not great store about playing with dog toys, except during your very early youth. But all the more you cherished fooling around with your fellow dogs. And encountering you, while playing with your four-legged friends and running around sprightly, touches my soul. Here you are again, my juvenile sportsman, sprinting along in considerable speed, with your curled happy-go-lucky tail upright in the air. Making new friends everywhere. Making love to your beloved girlfriend Yuma. Indulging your passion for jaunty scuffles with your best male dog friend NICO. And I recognize the sonorous baritone of your barking. Acting out your wild enthusiasm for the two Rhodesian Ridgeback ladies we occasionally met. And watching all these bygone occurrences, I marvel at your fascinatingly varied facial expressions and body language. I never was anywhere without you, I have never been anywhere without you. My absent friend, I miss our communication. Correct, dogs don't talk. Notwithstanding, they have quite a number of languages to choose from. Their facial expressions, varying on a wide scale, their vocal articulation, and their body language make up for the lacking ability to express words. There's the language of love, to begin with. Or the language of friendliness and tolerance, the language of tenderness, the language of trust and confidence, the language of humor, and several others. With rare exceptions, the longer, the fewer, I could understand you perfectly well, whenever you addressed me, and respond correspondingly. Now, I desperately miss our exchange, as I miss everything about you, your encouraging presence, your teaching me what really matters in life, your being my paradigm for all those traits, which in many respects make animals in general and dogs in particular superior to the human species. In a word, I miss you, and I miss you more than I ever missed anything else in my entire life. But I wanted to talk about your ways of communication. Your wide range of vocal articulation. Your facial expressions, your body language, and your gestures. Through the years of our togetherness, I learned to distinguish 10 or more of your basic modes of expression. Smiling contentedness. Surprise and wonder. A touch of fear. Astonishment and disbelief. Warm affection. Curious interest. Insecure skepticism. Encouraging query, for instance whenever you asked me for a goodie. Annoyance. Lively cheerfulness, reminding one of a smile. Total ease and relaxation. And there were more. Panic, for example, or rage, or despair. But of these I don't have any documentation, and with good reasons at that. One more fascinating thing in this context is how a dog identifies with his name. There are several other species who react adequately when they are called by their names. But I always had a feeling that you in particular and dogs in general have a somewhat more far-reaching notion regarding the first name, by which we call them all the time. To me, it seemed that your name NICO was more than a signal which triggered your attention. Of course, I know that dogs lack the ability for abstract thinking and making concepts. All the same, I always had the impression that you really owned your name. That being called NICO, with you met with a vague knowing that for us humans this name embraced anything that made up your nature. And if I am right, this stresses the importance for us to articulate our dogs' names in friendly tones whenever possible. And again, I never was anywhere without you. I have never been anywhere without you. In terms of formative circumstances during the first year of your life, you were definitely underprivileged and deprived. Poor little thing. Who on earth could fail so miserably towards your baby schema? We don't know much details about the series of mishaps and sufferings you had to endure. In your first family you were probably tormented and injured by cats. Scars from these injuries left their marks on your face for the time of your life. The vet at the kennel in Austria, where you were born, told us that the treatment and healing process were troublesome, for those who nurse you, for sure, but I guess even more so for yourself. And when afterwards you absolved your second trial stay with another family, you were already so much unsettled and disturbed, that they couldn't keep you either. So that during your early life, after being taken away from your mother and 6 siblings, you had to cope with 2 more harsh separation experiences, from which you never really recovered. No doubt, these incidents laid the roots for your lifelong separation panic. But I never was anywhere without you, and I have never been anywhere without you. In a pitch-black night some 20,000 years ago, a group of hardy men clothed in rude rags sat around a blazing fire, chewing on the bones of a deer they had recently killed. A lonely wolf had roamed about in the dense underwood for quite some time, driven by his gnawing hunger, and allured by the pleasant smell of roasted meat. Watching him, you could have seen his inner struggle between fear and irresistible craving. Though fearing both the flames of the fire, its crackling, and the men sitting around it, gradually he came nearer. One of the men noticed a slight rustling nearby, and told the others. Looking over their shoulders, they saw a pair of glimmering eyes. Everybody reached for his spear, but one young guy threw the bone he held in his hands towards the creature in the shade. Slowly, extremely carefully and ready to escape, the wolf grabbed the bone, retreated a few steps, and lay down to devour it. After he was done, he hesitatingly stood up again, came a few steps forward, and sat down, watching the men. Now another guy threw his bone, the wolf caught it in the air, and retreated again. The men put their spears down. This admittedly all too romantic and somewhat dopey story nonetheless could have taken place in a more or less similar way. It may stand as an example for the beginnings of the friendship between humans and canines, which in my view is one of the most grandiose and outstanding features evolution has brought about to this day. Or was it creation? So that even if life on this now morbid planet made no sense at all, and the existence of the human race were but one idiosyncratic error of evolution, nevertheless, this overwhelmingly magnificent friendship between dogs and humans in my perception makes up for it all. And fortunately, I never was anywhere without you, and I have never been anywhere without you. In consequence, I feel that this is your world. It belongs to you rather than to us humans, and you belong into it, much more than I do. And since you were an integral and existential part of my own being, now that you're missing, I feel utterly incomplete and bereaved. As I already said, I love you more than I ever loved anything in my life. And the counterpart to such immensely intense love is, that your loss catapulted me into a state of deepest despair. This pervasive existential sadness, I've known it for long. But after your death it has become my regular attitude towards life. For months, I couldn't figure how to live on without you. I urgently longed to follow you there, wherever you are now. And, as I said to myself, even if there meant nowhere, I wanted to be in that nowhere space together with you. In front of this horribly abrupt and terminal end, I asked myself, what sense such a short life, as yours was, could possibly make. And even though I had seen many fine people die, although I had lost several relatives who had been very dear to me, your parting was my first real and comprehensive encounter with the ultimate break, that comes with the death of a beloved one. And for the first time in my life, I felt an urging longing for some spiritual context, which would reaffirm that the end of our physical existence in this world is not the end of it all. Fact is, I never was anywhere without you, and I have never been anywhere without you. Next to the entrance of our apartment, there hangs a metal plate with an inscription on it, "A home without a dog is just a house." I not only cling to my memories, I also cling to my pain. Pain and memories are all you left me. And these two, at least, I want to keep. What is almost unbearable to me is the finality of your demise. Or is there such a thing as the eternal hunting grounds? I would hope so, but I fear it is just wishful thinking. Our physical existence is doomed to ephemeral frailty. Once the system breaks down, nothing but useless junk seems to remain. And when this physical existence had belonged to an extremely beloved creature, standing in front of this little heap of furry debris, one cannot help asking, if this really was it, isn't there something wrong with dying? If this peculiar essence, that had kept this heap of biology fascinatingly lively and special in so many ways for so many years, didn't survive the physical breakdown? What is this all about? You came here, were born into this mad and often hostile world, lived your little life, and disappeared again. What sense did it make? I can stand neither the idea that your life was senseless, nor the conception that absolutely nothing from your being should continue to exist somehow. My beloved visitor from another planet, where are you now? I regret to have to say that I can't find any consolation in praying. But never in my life I have felt the need for spiritual roots of some kind or another more urgently. I still couldn't say in what I do believe, but meanwhile, what I know for sure, is what I don't believe. I don't believe that such a wonderful creature as you were could dissolute into a mere nothing after passing. On the one hand because it cannot be true, on the other hand because it mustn't be true. It plainly would be irreconcilable with your dignity. So that at least I could claim to be a halfway believer, and half is better than naught. But I definitely need more than this. Why don't you send me a sign to reassure me, that you live on somewhere, that you are doing well? Why did you rarely ever visit me in my dreams so far? Since you had to die, for my part, I'm not afraid of dying anymore. The idea to pass away and to be where you are now, is more of a consolation. And again, if there meant nowhere, this wouldn't make a big difference either. But I have you to thank for one more gift, maybe the most precious one of them all. And there are many indeed. During your last few years, and even more so after your death, I actually came to surmise some divine dimension, which might dwell within you. Not exclusively within you, in all living creatures that is. But your being opened my senses towards this subject for the first time in my life. And if there were such a divine dimension, there couldn't be no doubt either, that it was immortal. Because anything else would make no sense at all. So here is, apart from my grief and memories, one more means, to keep you alive and warm in my mind. Although it isn't easy to love such an ethereal thing as a divine dimension, which breathed life into your existence and will eternally survive the latter. How should one give one's love to such a rather abstract concept? But your divine dimension is more than a mere philosophical spin, it's something I can really perceive and feel. And although many questions remain unanswered, this perception, though vague it may be, is what counts to me. I still miss you sorely every single day, as for sure I always will. But I can draw not a little comfort from this hopeful idea. I never was anywhere without you, I have never been anywhere without you. And, who knows, I might, always and everywhere, be near you? Today is the 2nd anniversary of your death. I have somehow managed to survive your loss for 2 years now. Meanwhile I have written a book about you and our extraordinary friendship. I've got done with your photo album. And then have been working on this film, which is now getting near its end. All 3 activities implied an intense re-envisioning of our great time together, of all the riches you have bestowed on me. While my adored ideal, the filmmaker named Leo Hurwitz, worked 8 years on his documentary about his wife departed, ending up with a film of almost 4 hours length, I feel that my little attempt shouldn't be that long. No one would watch a movie this length today. But I really fear the moment, when it's done and over. Even so, I'm all too familiar with those hollow hours, the never-ending days of grief and longing, my complete day-to-day bewilderment over your absence. You could say I didn't dare to let loose so far. Which is true, because I don't want to. I can't. I need you near me, otherwise this existence makes little sense. And as long as I'm browsing through my photos and memories, I do feel near you. But I can't figure any further projects, and my material, extensive though it may be, is petering out. Unless I drop into repetition and going round in circles. But when I come to think of it, these 2 years of my continuously being immersed into wistful recollections, have actually brought about a change within my state of mind. They also implied a training of some kind, to recover you back into my present life. And it really works, sometimes at least. I have focused on my remembrance of you for weeks and months on end. I had you with me every day for 2 years now. And somehow this has forged a strong, steady bond between us. Indeed, whenever I really want to, I just have to snap my fingers, and hey, you come up to me the next moment. I have learnt to savor these rapprochements, rather than fall into despair over them. And we can really meet each other, time and again. I feel you close by, whenever something mysteriously awesome is in the air. I feel you near me, when the wind is howling around the corners of our house. I suspect your presence between forest trees, when wafts of mist blur the outlines of their trunks. I sometimes recognize your shape in the mighty clouds, sailing majestically over a summer sky. I can feel you being around somewhere, when the distant mountains appear in a tinge of blue. I know that you are close by when the forest on the horizon is asleep, dreaming its somber green dreams. I know for sure that you can't be far away, when at dusk the dwindling daylight seems to get frozen and I unexpectedly stand before a cozy cottage, with a warm glow falling through its windows. I can touch your silky fur the minute just before I fall asleep, with you lying next to me, so that your back nestles up against my belly. I realize your proximity during these gray, quiet days between Christmas Eve and New Year's, when all these trivial single things that constitute everyday life somehow seem insignificant, unreal even. You often cuddle up beside me on the sofa, when I, though rarely, dare to spend a few days alone in our otherwise deserted and empty bungalow in the mountains. And then, I can also hear your deep sigh of comfort and relaxation, seconds before you deliver yourself to sleeping. I never was anywhere without you. And I will never be anywhere without you. I never was anywhere without you. I never was anywhere. And I will never be anywhere without you. And I never was anywhere without you. And I will never be anywhere without you. I never was anywhere without you. I never was anywhere. Never was anywhere. Never was anywhere. And I will never be anywhere without you.